Shaping the Next Normal, Trends and Outlook takes a look at the major changes brought by the current crisis in the business sector. A panel of experts will begin the discussion by the 15-minute presentation of the resource speaker, followed by each speaker's 10-minute presentation about the topic. Questions from each other and the audience will be entertained afterwards. Participants are expected to obtain reliable data and valid evidences for decision making and analyze trends, outlook, and forecasts that will be the future of business. Track Session 1 is brought to you by BPI, PLDT, Sea Oil, and Phoenix Petroleum. Our host for today's session is a television host and radio broadcaster in ABS-CBN, hosting Usapang Kalye in DZMM Teleradyo. She is a Binibining Pilipinas semi-finalist and a journalist. Please welcome Ms. Tina Marasigan.
Once again, a pleasant afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the applause. We are holding the first and biggest virtual conference by the Philippine Franchise Association, Franchise Asia Philippines 2020, Asia's leading franchise show. And this year's theme is pivoting towards the golden age of franchising. And this event aims to maximize technology to reach business owners, help them meet market demands, and stay connected. Even though we have spaces between us, we should be connected. And we were off to a very good start this morning's plenary sessions, led by host and moderator, Ms. Isa Litton, the beautiful Isa. And before we begin the session, Shaping the Next Normal, Trends and Outlook, allow me to introduce to you my partner this afternoon. He is the man whose invaluable contributions led to success of the sports retail industry and the country, a household name in the Philippines. He is the chairman emeritus of Quorum Holdings Corporation, the holding company for Toby Sports, Runner, and Urban Athletics. Please welcome my partner for this afternoon, Mr. Roberto Claudio. Hi, Sir Bob. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tina. I'm excited to join you in this session as we discuss the current trends and the outlook that are shaping up in the next normal, along with the panel of experts. And we are very eager to hear from them because us businessmen won't even know how to define what is new normal. There seems to be nothing normal about the new normal or the next normal. Be glad to hear from them so we can proceed, Tina.
But before that, allow me to say that I am truly honored to be with you today, Sir Bob, and with our speakers, because I am sure that we will be getting a lot of insights for the business trends that are coming out and the current trends that we are experiencing amid the pandemic. But allow me to ask you first, Sir Bob, since you also have your first-hand experience, what was going through your mind when we started to experience the pandemic? What was the thought inside your head about the business trends that we are about to experience amid this COVID-19?
Well, the first few months when we implemented the lockdown was really scary for almost all of us retailers because we didn't know how long we were going to be locked down. And closing the store with no revenue for the last 2 to 3 months is really devastating, not just for even the big ones, but even for the small and even the micro and medium scale businesses. So it was very, very scary. And then when they started opening up, they started distinguishing between essential and non-essential. So we felt that us in the sports business at that time, we were not considered essential because I guess the only essential ones then were drugstores and food outlets. Everything else were non-essential. So we were worried, but then we realized that we were going to come up with something that will be facing the people, and especially our during downtime, our demand for sports products was very low, and during downturn in the economies, people tend to look for outlets and recreation. So in this pandemic situation, we saw the opportunity for people to remain healthy by being able to stay fit. And we clamored that sports or recreation or fitness, physical fitness, be part of the essential that people will need during this pandemic times.
I salute you with that business resilience, seeing the opportunity despite the difficulties in the business trend that we are experiencing because of this pandemic. But what is your secret, or what is the technique for you to stay connected to your market, especially when it comes to sports goods?
Well, what we saw in this pandemic, it brought us and opened our eyes to the work at home and even stay at home culture, which was developed. People had no choice. You can't go out, you can't work out in the gyms, you can't go out jogging, so you were forced to stay home. So we focused on that work at home or stay at home culture, and open up more product line categories that would help people stay fit. And not only on the product lines, but also on the technology where people can access us. We have 3 websites, the tobis.com, the runner.com, and the urbanathletics.com. And we opened up also other options. So other than the click and collect, we now have the chat and collect. Simple phone call to the store, tell them this is what you need, pay the necessary payment, whatever contactless payment form that you made, show the proof that you made. You just simply go to the store, wait in your car, we will bring out the product for you. And then we also have live streaming selling now, and again, also through Viber, Instagram, and Facebook. We were able to be in touch with our consumers.
Wow, Sir Bob, I just had a couple of questions for you, but I'm starting to learn a lot. We are not even on the main presentation yet. And before we hear the presentation of our panel of experts, let's take a look first at the degree of your optimism in the way your business operates in the new normal. Please take part in our Zoom poll, and let's check if there will be changes after you hear our discussion. So we are flashing the question right now. What is the degree of your optimism in the way your business operates in the new normal? So you have 5 options here. It can be very optimistic or optimistic, can be neutral, pessimistic, or very pessimistic. So we will give you a minute to answer. So the reason why we are doing this Zoom poll is to see if your responses will be different before and after our session. And Sir Bobby, I would like to hear your thought on this, but I think I have to wait a while since you have your own ideas as well.
Yes, Tina. In fact, it's very good that we're throwing this question to our participants this afternoon. Maybe I'll share something also this before the end of this session on a survey of about 160 businessmen on what they see as far as what the future holds post-pandemic, or if there is such thing as a post-pandemic. We don't know whether there's going to be a vaccine. We don't know whether it's going to be a second wave, a third wave. So a lot of uncertainties. And businessmen are really at this point in time. So let's see how they feel. And after hearing our 3 speakers today, some of them may change their mind. either agree to be more optimistic or be more pessimistic. Let's see that result after.
Yes, and we are hoping that on the last day of the conference, your level of confidence will be boosted and your outlook and perspective on your current situation will change. So right now, the option for being optimistic for the business operation in the new normal is on the lead, 54%. So I hope that after our session, more votes for the very optimistic option will come out. All right, so to help us understand how to deal with the current situation, we'll begin with our first panel of experts. She is presently the Undersecretary for National Development Policy and Planning at the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA. Among her major responsibilities is shepherding the formulation of the Philippine Development Plan, or PDP, and the PDP is an elaboration of the country's priorities over the medium term and is the blueprint of government policies, programs, and projects. And she's also overseeing the monitoring of the PDP implementation. In addition, she is in charge of providing technical advice on policy issues to both the legislative and executive branches of government, especially the communities or the committees of the NEDA board. Presently, she chairs the task group on recovery under the National Task Force against COVID-19. She is also the chairperson of the Technical Working Group on Anticipatory and Forward Planning and a member of the Sub-TWG on Data Analytics under the Interagency Task Force on the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, a 2019 Presidential Gawad CES awardee. Let's give our warmest welcome to USEC ROSEMARIE EDILLON. Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone.
All right.
Yeah.
The second of our panel of experts is a World Bank IFC governance consultant, a family business coach, book author, professor, and former chair of the marketing cluster of the Ateneo Graduate School of Business in Manila, and a visiting senior fellow at the IPMI International Business School in Jakarta, a business school established by Harvard University. He is currently the executive director of the WONG BERNSTEIN Family Advisory Group and senior advisor of the Post and Powell Strategic Group based in Singapore, and sits as independent director of publicly listed Emperador Distillers and Resorts World Manila. Now living his third professional life, his advocacy related to family governance and strategic management has made him a sought-after senior advisor and resource speaker at American universities and international conferences, delivering 150 talks annually. Let's give it up for Professor Eric Soriano.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Bobby. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. Glad to be here. I look forward to the exchange. Thank you.
And our third expert from the panel is currently the president of KANTAR Philippines Incorporated and CEO of its Insights Division. He has for more than 2 decades been in the business of helping its clients formulate human-centric growth plans with applications to brand strategy, in-market brand guidance, innovation, creative development, media strategy, commerce, and customer experience. He has managed the impact on the local business of several global mergers and acquisitions, where he has learned and implemented various approaches to leadership, cultural rebuilding and harmonization, coaching and mentoring, strategy planning and implementation, as well as turning around business decline back to sustainable growth. Let us all welcome Mr. Gary de Ocampo.
Thank you very much, Tina. Thank you, Bobby, and good afternoon to everyone.
Now I have given the introduction to our speakers. Now we will move on to their discussion. So we have first USEC Rosemary.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much to the organizers for inviting the NEDA to present to you this this discussion, to be here during this discussion of the new trends under the new normal. Hopefully, I can contribute to adding to the to the optimistic view after my talk. So, if I may share my screen, please. Ah, yes. Yeah, so just to confirm if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay, thank you very much. So my discussion is actually um, structured along three lines. First is a very brief discussion of the economic performance and outlook, what has been our performance this past semester, and what do we see going forward. And then next, what we think are the challenges being faced under the new normal. And then third, just to share with you the government incentives to improve the business environment in this new normal. So first is to look at the economic performance of the country in 2020. So I have here the Q1 and the Q2 performance, and then I have the semester one compared against the semester one of 2019. So as you can see, GDP contracted by 9% during that first semester, in contrast to the growth that we had last year, which was 5.6%. So again, as you can see on the demand side, you have almost all sectors being in the negative, so contraction talaga, except for government final consumption. And this is really the case where government was very deliberate in its counter cyclical policies, because we know that in times like this, during this pandemic, during these lockdowns, it's really government that will be inducing this demand, and hopefully that there will be a corresponding response from the supply side. So on the supply side, you can see here that except for agriculture, the others are also contracted. So industry, even manufacturing contracted by 12.5%, and services, which is actually more than 50% of the GDP, it contracted by 8.2%. Now let me just dwell a bit on the services, just so you have an idea of which sectors really bore the brunt of this of the lockdown that we had. So this is for the entire the subsectors under the services sector here. So as you can see, most of them actually contracted, yeah, as expected. Retail, trade, transport, and storage. So almost everything except for information and communication. And yes, we actually expected that. Financial and insurance activities, and then public administration and defense, and then compulsory social activities. Human health and social work activities actually also contracted here, but if you look at the disaggregation with respect to human health, then that was also a positive. So again, to be expected that those the services that have to do with the essential, what we call them, they are actually the ones that posted a positive performance, a growth during that first semester. The others really suffered, like retail, trade, transport, and of course accommodation, professional and business services, and etc. Now, what has been happening so far? So after this first semester, I'm showing here the Google Mobility Data Tracker, which actually tells us, after we've eased some of the restrictions, how is now the mobility of our consumers, of our workforce, etc. So So the first one here on the left is data as of August 17, and then I have the data as of September 11. So as you can see here, in terms of retail and recreation, yes, we are seeing some recovery here from minus 51% before to now just minus 36 compared to the baseline, compared to pre-COVID state. Grocery and pharma is also recovering, although it did not start off as being that badly hit. With respect to parks, this is actually a good indication here that before there you see a minus 22%, a contraction in mobility in the traffic going to parks, minus 22, whereas as of September 11, it's just a minus 6%. So there are now a lot more people going to the parks. I just hope that they're still practicing social distancing. And then you have the other stuff here. And let me just say that there are other indicators that we are looking towards a recovery here. Okay, so another piece of good news is that inflation has remained low and stable within the band, and so we are not really seeing any supply problems right now. Although we know that there are logistics bottlenecks, but in the whole, this is largely addressed. With respect to employment, I also would like to bring your attention to this one. So I have here the April 2020 survey of the labor force and then the July 2020 survey of the labor force. Of course, in April, we know that we were in lockdown. And so if you look at the number of employed workers, you have 33.7 million here. And then in July, we actually eased the restrictions here. So from ECQ, we went to GCQ. And you see here that there's already an increase. It went up to 41.3. And that's actually an increase of 7.5 million. So between April and July, and it was really because we eased the restrictions. We started opening up the economy. So for us, it means that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the economy. It really contracted because we locked down the economy, and that was really in order to save lives. So for 2021 and 2022, we actually expect a recovery. We do expect a contraction for the entire 2020, okay, up to probably 5.5%. Actually, this should be a 6.6%. I'm sorry about that. And then for next year, we expect a bounce back from 6.5 to 7.5%. Now, just to share with you about this new normal. Actually, in May of this year, we came up with a document, a report. We recover as one, and you are welcome to review it. It's available on our website, and we teased out actually what this new normal means. There are a number of other things there, but this is the general context of this new normal. First, social distancing will still be observed. Face covering will be required. Strict hygiene and sanitation protocols. There will still be sporadic lockdowns for as long as COVID-19 is actually, amongst us, then there will still be sporadic lockdowns, but we're hoping it will be very targeted in terms of geographical, incidents. And we also need to remember that this looming COVID-19 threat will be foremost in the minds of individuals, consumers, and businesses alike. So we see that this actually implies a number of challenges. First, there could be new opportunities, and challenges. There will be shifting consumer preferences, and there will also need to be shifts in the production processes. We may have limited flexibility to respond because there will still be restrictions, limited movement of people, even as we continue to ease restrictions. They may also be some limited mobility with respect to goods and the delivery of services, especially if there will be sporadic lockdowns. There will be increased preference or demand for online transactions, obviously. So this is what we think will happen with respect to household expenses. There will be higher household demand for health products and health boosting goods and services. Higher demand for soap, obviously, hand sanitizer, alcohol, face mask, face shields, internet access, electronics gadgets, utilities, electricity, gas, and water, and then bikes and motorbikes. And probably lower household demand on durables other than the ones that are listed up there. Non-essentials, of course, and then tourism and travel. So for investment, the investment sector, there will be higher investment demand, we think, for delivery vans and motorbikes, for digital connectivity, electronics equipment, and storage facilities, and lower investment demand for air transport, and probably also for office space. So some suggestions for the franchising community. First of all, franchisors can actually leverage their franchise network to negotiate for better terms in order to help your franchisee. So I hope that the suppliers will see this as a very temporary setback, and that pretty soon we will be on our way to recovery. But in the meantime, it actually pays to keep that network up and about. Next, we will need to redesign our business models to increase, the pickup and delivery services. Earlier, Mr. Bob Claudio actually mentioned about how his businesses had to be reconfigured for more of this pickup and delivery. We need to maintain safety and hygiene. We need to protect our franchise brand. Actually, at this time, the franchise actually has that advantage of a brand recall, and so it is important that we maintain that reputation. And at the moment, what is foremost in the minds of our consumers, of our customers, is actually safety and hygiene. So we need to maintain that reputation. We need to realign our services with consumer demands and convenience. And we need to be creative. There will always be a next normal after this. We need to enhance collaboration between the franchisor and franchisee. In Japan, for instance, 7-Eleven Holdings actually always come up with this collaboration between the franchisor and franchisee in order to come up with new ideas. So, what are now the government initiatives that we are doing? So, right now, we are still at the phase where we are doing this prevent, detect, isolate, treat, and reintegrate. This is the PDITR strategies that we are saying. So, about the preventing the transmission, it's really about the minimum health standards. It's about all these restrictions with respect to mobility, with respect to travel, and then with respect to detect is really the contact tracing. And then, of course, the isolation treatment, of course, is also known. And then reintegrate is about making sure that those who are able to recover from the diseases can actually be able to go back to their normal lives, quote unquote, new normal lives. And this is actually, in a nutshell, the way the task group on recovery is organizing its strategies. We're calling it Recharge PH. And the objectives are twofold. One is to reduce COVID-19 transmissions and non-COVID-19 deaths, and to restart social and economic activities. The way we see it is that this is really a big task, and you cannot leave it to government alone. We need to engage all of society in this PDITR strategies. But we think that even as we do this, as we become involved with this PDITR strategies, we can restart social and economic recoveries. So I have here four sets of broad strategies. First is contribution to the PDI strategies by complying with the minimum health standards, by being actively involved in the PDI protocols, being part of contact tracing, etc. Then contribution to the R strategies by reducing economic losses. Like I mentioned earlier, some franchisors may actually negotiate for better terms to their franchises, especially as we are still, getting back on our feet, addressing psychosocial concerns. And then, we can actually have this business and service continuity focusing on, first of all, health system improvement, Okay, food security, learning continuity, digital transformation, and ecological integrity. And then making sure that we have the good governance strategies that are inclusive, people-centered, responsive, clean, and technology-enabled. So I only have a few seconds left by my timer. So I just would like to share that, government has a number of initiatives to help the MSMEs to recover in the new normal and actually to transition to this new normal. We have this different, webinars being conducted by the DTI, by the DOLE, by the DICT. It's really to help businesses to be able to transform to this new normal. And then we have a number of sorry a number of financial assistance also available. And also just to share with you that in terms of monetary policy support, the Bangko Central is actually really going out of its way in order to provide that necessary what do you call that, the fishing line, the line, so that we can see this through. And of course, you also know that the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act, we call it the Bayanihan 2, has just been signed. And this one also includes a number of technical and financial assistance that will be available. And so all this, government is working very hard to do this. But like I said, this is too much of a task for government to do it alone, and we will not actually be able to succeed if we do not get all of society to rally and to cooperate in this fight against the COVID. And so we think that right now we're at the stage where we are actually starting to recharge, starting to recover as one. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Yusek Rose.
Thank you, Undersecretary EDILLON. Can I react on USEC's presentation? One of the main problems right now, USEC, of most businesses after having 3 months of no sales, and then our next 3 months, no customers coming in, even if we were open. Cash flow has really disintegrated a lot of businesses. The big ones, yes, may mga reserves sila, kaya pa nila. The medium size, they're just on a break even. Ano yung pumasok, yun din nalalabas. So they're in a precarious situation. The small ones run out of cash flow. Hindi na sila makapagtuloy. They have to fire people. They close. Our biggest concern right now, USEC, is while the Bayanihan 1 and 2 gave instructions already to the financial institutions to put more money into the businesses, especially those that are struggling. The banks doesn't seem to be cooperating, or on the contrary, they're now strict. You pay first your previous loan before we give you a new one, or because you are sure your business is already unsure, you are no longer qualified to have a loan. So parang sa aming mga businesses nowadays, to approach a bank because of cash flow problems, you have to prove to them that you don't need cash.
Yeah.
And maybe approvehan ka nila. So how else can the government translate that bayanihan to get the banks to really cooperate on the cash flow needs? Walang matatakbuhan yung mga businessmen except the banks when it's a cash flow problem.
Yes.
So maybe something can be done more on that aspect.
Yes.
Yusek Rose and Sir Bob, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a very good question raised by Sir Bob. And I think Yusek Rose already has an answer to that, but we will hold that for our audience. And we would like to ask our participants as well to take note of your questions and your reactions, because we will have time for you to raise that up after the three speakers are done with their discussion. So with your indulgence, may we move on to our next speaker, Sir Bob?
Go ahead. Great.
Okay, Professor Eric, you're on.
Okay, thank you. So I know there's a very limited time. Again, it's an honor, it's a pleasure. So I'd like to go straight ahead. Let me just prepare my slide. Okay. So again, thank you to PFA, Franchise Asia, for this opportunity. I'd go and then jump right ahead. So webinar objectives, it's navigating the crisis. It's embracing the new normal as based on the topic that was highlighted, and what must be done, just straight to the point. Just a bit of attribution based on the research. I'd like to highlight some of those that participated and was able to provide information. So this is the current, very updated list of COVID cases in Southeast Asia. And you see September, it's almost the same as the August, and a huge spike, making the Philippines #1 in Southeast Asia in terms of infection. So my first question I'd like to provoke the audience is, what did you do during the pandemic? From a context, it's really asking this question. Business leaders need to ask it of themselves now, because that question will be asked years from now of both government and business once the COVID-19 battle has been won. So I'd like to reiterate that question. Maybe time to think about it. What did you do during the pandemic? So ask yourselves, and just essentially reflecting on this as we move forward, trying to combat and battle COVID-19. For some organizations, like what Ian Davis said, near-term survival is the only agenda. But the question is, what will normal look like? Well, no one can say how long the crisis will last. What we find on the other side will not look like the normal of recent years. So I had the fortune of being invited and doing a talk with the PFA a few weeks ago. The title was Time to Turn Your Business Around, with closing as never an option. It was a tough but a provocative statement. But this was the study post-event that was polled by the organizer, Icon Executive Asia. It says there that 58% are in dire need of a business turnaround, and 24% needs sales and marketing, and 11% obviously fall under finances. So a huge 58% are desperately hanging on to straws for obvious reasons. The pandemic has impacted and disrupted the way we do things. So it's a world-changing event. Now, there are major shifts in the retail landscape, from the macro, commercial to cost. So let me walk you through. Spending, there's a reduction in discretionary income. E-commerce, there's an exponential growth of e-commerce and omni-channel platforms. You're probably aware of this. There's a major shift in purchasing, where the focus is on essentials and value, and home as our what we call multiverse, the center of life. Loyalty is switching. There's a shock to loyalty and brands. There continues to be more switching, according to McKinsey. And the footprint, right-sizing brick and mortar stores and supply chain are roundly redesigning and possibly even doing something dramatic to reduce the cost. And safety, there's an increasing cost related to hygiene. There will be more frequent and in-depth cleaning cycles, and that's going to add to cost. And finally, labor dynamics, increasing need for on-demand workforce that can scale with demand. So outsourcing would be the way to go to manage your burning cost. So these are dramatic shifts in the retail landscape. So the coronavirus is a super VUCA event, no doubt about it. And I'd like to go straight to the point, walk you through what it takes to be in this virus scenario and how to navigate this super VUCA or Black Swan event. The first one is to develop resiliency and efficiency. I think that's very important. And developing resiliency in the storms of your life means what? It's the ability to absorb a shock and to come out of it better than the competition. And that will be the key to survival and long-term prosperity. Now, in my work in Asia, doing a lot of turnaround work on family-owned businesses, a lot of business continuity plans I've done last year are now proven to be wonderful executional campaigns. And that is what? Typically, we were able to prepare and create a stretched balance sheet. And the ability to immediately pivot and cut operating costs without practically maiming your workforce. And one company that stands out, at least here in the Philippines, would be Emperador. So I happen to sit in the board for the past 5 years, and dramatically, after being inducted in the Philippine Stock Exchange Index, which is the bellwether for all the stock companies, the increase was 24% in the second quarter versus 2019. So what paved the way for Emperador to pivot? It was all about vision and preparation. As early as 3 to 4 years ago, when the sin taxes were introduced in this country, and we had no way to go but to explore opportunities overseas. So whatever downsides we experienced because of the lockdown here, we pretty much compensated with our growth curves in Mexico, in China, and in other countries, close to 100 countries where Emperador is distributed. So that's a classic case of a business plan, a solid one, that we made sure we executed to the letter. So therefore, efficiency means what? It's the quality, it's the speed to market, and the managing of the cost that help Emperador to where it is now. But we have to rethink this. This advice is sound, but it's not enough. COVID-19 has damaged the economy, period. It is not enough for many companies to tweak their business model. Instead, they will need to rethink it. And the succeeding slides will help us. Therefore, a strategic mindset is urgently needed, and the entire business structure and the industry must be revisited now, more than ever. So let me quickly give you a certain model that you can use. On the left side is the extent of the business model disruption. Below it is the depth and length of the industry demand disruption. So, having said that, if the extent is more, meaning the red on the left, you have two options. Do nothing, and you'll suffer. Sustain, and you'll probably suffer. Or shift your business model. However, that's internal. The external side is if the depth and length of the industry demand disruption is more, which is in the lower part, the red, you need to start thinking of restructuring your company and or your industry. If they all come in, just like what happened now, where the disruption has tremendously impacted your operations and the industry, it's time to shape a new business. So this is how you navigate. This is how you manage. And the other downside is, do you have a succession plan in place? Just this pandemic alone, 3 of the founders that I have been coaching for the past 5 years passed away. So in one forum that I delivered a talk, it was the Chinese Federation. This was the question asked: do family-owned businesses in the Philippines have a succession plan? Obviously, 80% don't have a succession plan. So therefore, many are unprepared. So the crisis has revealed weaknesses in succession plans as leaders get sick without a successor stepping into the plate. So therefore, my advice is Yes, you can focus on making money, which is the business of the business, but it is high time that you start refocusing your efforts on the business of the family, where governance plays a huge role and succession planning plays a huge role. Because we don't know, what if you die tonight? And the business can come stumbling. Therefore, balancing the two is important. Then the digital space just got more intense. Look, for how many years, stubbornly, the players, the owners have refused to change. Now, thanks to COVID, they see the value of digital transformation. So therefore, we are currently operating contact-free. And the key here now is digital commerce will be here to stay. So one more example, I sit in this board again. It's a telemedicine platform. Figures for virtual health have been exponential. And just this June, it reported a 15% increase in surveys. And they're adding hundreds of doctors because of the virtual healthcare. Then the third is more government intervention is needed. Yes, we have had, like the good Undersecretary mentioned, record drops. And we have outperformed the drop during the Marcos period. So therefore, economic packages are important. We lag behind from other developed economies. That is why we are clearly mired in a spike in infection and a loss of employment. Therefore, personally, support is not enough. We need to save more livelihoods. In doing so, we save employment by the millions. Then changing industry structures and consumer behavior. It is imperative that we look at the consumer's primary concerns right now. And perhaps my next resource speaker will highlight more details based on his experience with KANTAR. But clearly, 47% are saying that we expect to retain changed behaviors after the outbreak. But what is your company's current level of concern? Again, 54, 34, and 12%. So having said that, look at Uniqlo. They started their desire to spend more money on e-commerce out of survival. So for millennial business owners, this is the biggest disruption of your lives. And your attitudes have changed. And the black swan will not end with this COVID. There will be more. For tourism, travel, and hospitality, you'd see dramatic changes. From project teams to industry relief, to communication, to industry relaunch, and to industry observatory. But the key here is what? There must be a central crisis management team and a tourism response that will lead the way. Same with the franchise industry. And finding hope. I know I have limited time. If necessity is the mother of invention, what came out of this? What silver lining? It is the human imperative to survive and to communicate. For businesses, we have done wonders at greater speed and at a high level. And therefore, we're beginning to appreciate real time. And the coronavirus has created a lot of opportunities. So yes, there's indeed hope. But hope is not the strategy. Action is. And therefore, from discomfort, we need to jump to survival, opportunity, and growth. So, to close this, is it time to reposition? Should we reboot? Should we reinforce partnerships? Should we find new and enduring ways to collaborate? Should we initiate changes now to enable us to address a future crisis? Some are saying COVID is a dress rehearsal for a more potent virus, 100 times more powerful. We don't know, but nurturing a next normal will be a long-term test for all institutions. And decisions made during this crisis has led to many innovations and productivity. Hopefully, make us more resilient and hopefully a smarter government. So, wrapping this up, economic recovery scenarios. China will come out ahead of practically everybody. EU and the US will lag behind. In the GDP here in Asian economies, China and Vietnam will declare positive GDP by the end of the year. The Philippines is down. but there is an opportunity to move up soon if we all gather steam and collaborate. So, to close this, optimism is true moral courage. That's Shackleton, one of our brands in Emperador. And he's a living proof that optimism and courage means what? Are needed more than ever as you make the decisions that will shape the next normal. So wrapping this up, to give you hope, it's all about this black swan. But history has proven that economies have recovered and even perform much better after any black swan. So yes, action conquers fear. You need to execute the plan. You need to create a business plan, a solid and sustainable. And to close the last two slides, it all boils down to having growth drivers, using performance as the end result, but looking at culture, innovation, and differentiation. So marketing strategy, it all boils down to design execution. Thank you so much. If you want to download the free business plan template, just look at our website, wbadvisoryasia.com. Thank you. I missed the time by 1 minute and 45 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We don't mind that missing that 1 minute. Thank you. That was a very deep and soul-searching for us businessmen. I'm sure a lot of participants today have learned a lot on that presentation. Thank you again, Eric.
Thank you.
You know what, Sir Bob? So many thoughts inside my head now because of that fruitful discussion from Professor Eric. And if I may summarize the thoughts in my head, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. But later on, we will have more reactions on Professor Eric's discussion. And meanwhile, we'll move on to Sir Gary as we hear his discussion from KANTAR, Philippines. Hi, Sir Gary. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you again. I'm now sharing my screen. Are you seeing it now?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. I will certainly be simply reiterating a number of points that Undersecretary Rose and Professor Eric have already mentioned. Based on our 8-wave COVID-19 barometer run in about 50 countries, which we started before the March 16 lockdown, let me start with the conclusion that consumer confidence is currently low because the Filipino consumer is scared and worried. As of August, we still see that Filipino adults remain very anxious about the situation. We continue to be the most worried across several Asia-Pacific countries about the possibility of a second wave. At first, this was mitigated to a certain extent by the high approval of Filipinos of our government's response to the crisis. But even that has declined considerably from a high 78% in April to 51% in August. Very likely, based on our social media buzz analysis, because of the perception of inconsistency in visible priorities seen in the government's earlier admission of a lack of a mass testing plan, the shutdown of ABS-CBN, the focus on the anti-terror bill, the online selling taxation, the PhilHealth corruption allegations, and the highly politicized environment, which all seem to have created a crack in the previously impenetrable public support for the government. There also seems to be a resurgence of sentiments about the crisis' impact on daily life, driven by financial security concerns as well as anxiety about health, which is strongest here across ASEAN countries. Most of our countrymen expect that economic recovery will take a long time and hence will have a long-term impact in terms of job losses and businesses struggling, which then makes many very worried about the future. These worries are clearly not without basis, because the crisis has hit home, with more than 8 out of 10 Filipino adults saying that the virus situation has already affected their household income, while 4 out of 10 have either been working on reduced hours or salary, furloughed, or become altogether unemployed. Now, with all these worries, the Filipino consumers are conflicted because a great majority look forward to meeting friends and relatives again, going back to church, and their hairdressers. These things, as well as other outdoor activities, are expectedly hard decisions to make, as the conflict between wanting to step out of the house and protecting oneself and family from the virus spread remains very intense. We expect that it will continue to be a seesaw between these opposing desires. Just look at the throng that went to Manila Bay last Saturday and the resulting backlash. After appreciating, for the most part, the opportunity to work from home by those whose jobs can be done from homes, most also want to go back to their respective offices, given the largely poor working conditions in most houses. Wanting to secure the future that they are very much worried about now, they plan to make investment if and when they have the money to invest. To deal with boredom at home, they plan to subscribe to on-demand TV and home broadband, again, if and when they have money to spend. Now, in terms of future plans, online Filipino adults plan to postpone travels by public transport, ride-hailing, carpooling, as well as both by air and sea, either for work or personal. Several purchase plans for durables have been delayed or canceled altogether, either because of the uncertainty of what is yet to come, or they have already lost the purchasing power to buy these items. So how is the Filipino coping? At the start of the lockdown, they tended to sleep more. Many of them have maintained their exercise regimen up to now and are making better use of their time to develop themselves, be it via online courses or do-it-yourself discovery activities at home like gardening, baking, homeschooling, painting, and whatnot. They also turned to watching TV more at the beginning of the series of lockdowns, but that declined declined after the shutdown of ABS-CBN, and the level of watching has not returned since to normal levels, even though they are watching GMA more now than before. There has been a marked increase in listening to the radio, on the other hand. Online, YouTube is number one, followed by Facebook and Messenger. The Filipino consumers have expectedly become ultra price sensitive and are seeking for more bang for their buck, especially that they have been compelled to try out products and services that they never thought they would try out before the lockdown. And for the most part, they have found these of acceptable quality. However, given all the constraints and the worries, their overall purchases, shown here in terms of brought home fast-moving consumer good products, have gone drastically down. Hardest hit have been the middle class, likely because several of those in classes D and E received cash doleouts. I have not had the time to be familiar with the salient points of Bayanihan 2, but a watch out here is that if there is no more SAP, what will happen to the lower classes, which comprise 86% of Philippine households? On the overall, the number of shopping trips has gone significantly down, but the shopping basket has become bigger. Not enough to compensate for the fewer trips, but the more valuable baskets remain an opportunity to retailers. Now, let's place this, however, within the bigger context. And we see that more than half of Filipino adult consumers tend to avoid the big malls and superstores. And more of them choosing to shop in nearby stores. While all buying channels, including sari-sari stores, declined significantly, there has been marked uptick in the use of e-commerce and consequently home deliveries. This current increase in the take-up of e-commerce is indeed proving to be what's in store for us in the future. It remains to be nascent here in the Philippines if we look at it from an overall perspective, but very clearly, by leading in this space now, you are more likely to win tomorrow. And the same goes for delivery, which can either be tied to e-commerce or not. And for most of you, if you think you are not in the delivery business, you should think twice. So, as you can imagine, there is nothing we can do about the disease. It is up to the government to lead the way to combat it. All we can do is to support the government with every possible resource we can spare. But we can certainly try to manage the disruption, armed with all the learning and skills we have acquired from dealing with other disruptions in the past. People have largely not been allowed to shop. Most people are too worried to shop anyway. And many people have lost the ability to shop when they lost their jobs. We think that reactivating demand is not as simple as reopening stores. But for business planners, it is a problem that we will have to address. Stores and brands can be well-financed and always available, but if consumers cannot or will not shop and buy, then the whole system fails to get started. Every business in every category must remake itself in order to send the signals that will reactivate demand. So the question then becomes how? In KANTAR, drawing from learning from decades of working with our clients through several economic crises, we believe that economic and marketing fundamentals do not change, even in times of recession. And therefore, we can continue to base our decisions on these fundamentals. We know from our database globally that brands with strong equity recover faster than other brands by 9 times through crisis. These brands are those that continue to communicate to their markets through crisis via keeping their brand narrative relevant, their communication meaningful, sent across effective touchpoints, demonstrated through innovative products and services that genuinely address new consumer frictions, and that are available in safe and reachable purchase channels that align with new buying journeys. And finally, delivering as authentic and as awesome as possible customer experience. Certainly not easy to do given the massive uncertainty out there, which is what keeps this question at front and center. Do we panic or do we pounce? Do we freeze or do we fight? Where do we even begin? Our response must be that we manage the uncertainty, and this will require understanding of situations. And this is the reason why, from the start of the crisis, we have highlighted to our clients the importance of scenario planning. Our hope in doing so is that so we can elevate the conversation from what is happening to what happens next and how we can best prepare. And we believe that in an event as unpredictable and unprecedented as this one, businesses need clarity about the crucial period beyond the current crisis, but before the crisis has fully faded and a new normal has been reached. We have isolated 3 uncertainties to explore through these scenarios. How the disease will behave, how institutions will behave, and how consumers will behave. By combining these uncertainties, we are able to describe a range of alternative futures. So therefore, they become a tool for planning and action so that the business is prepared for whatever scenario will turn into reality. And we think that the scenarios are now down to a toss between a recurring nightmare that will require seasons of putting out fires and a brave new reality that will require imagining a really new economy. So we have to imagine the implications of each of these 2 scenarios, which of course will greatly vary across industries. We must try to understand the shape of demand, then apply as relevant to your respective industries the emerging themes of hygiene, readiness, indulgence, hyper digitization, life from home, and others, and use them as compelling signals of recovery. Now, I intended to leave with you some thought starters thought starters as you look at each of the remaining possible scenarios. But in the interest of time, I hope to just touch on some of these in the discussion that will follow. So certainly, yes, we can learn from our past experiences with all sorts of disruptions, but we will also need to layer it with incredibly and completely new ways. It will be difficult, but all crises are both danger and opportunity. Seizing opportunities and dodging dangers will not happen by chance, but will start with understanding people so we can together come up with human-centric growth plans. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Gary. Very good presentation, especially on the market and the consumer side. We'll hope that we have some good questions later on. Tina?
Yes, sir, Bob. You know, I think we have collated a lot of questions and reactions from our attendees. But before that, after the presentations are done from our panel of experts, let's begin with a discussion with my initial question for you again. Actually, parang pangatlong tanong ko na to sa'yo, Sir Bob. Sir, if I may I ask you again, how do you define new normal from your business perspective, and how were you able to reflect that from your business operations? And are you also taking 10 steps ahead for your future plans, even though there's a tendency for the behavior of purchasing to change?
Okay, Tina, something to this effect, and this is how we're approaching our new normal. Historically, people play and work out more than when the economy is down and the demand for sports and fitness equipment goes up. We didn't fully understand this until now, when people are stressed, anxious, depressed. Regular exercise is really one of their best ways of coping up with this pandemic. And we're glad we can provide the tools that help people stay fit at the time when physical and mental health is so important. So that's how we're approaching our new challenge in this pandemic. It's not about selling sports products. I think the sports products are just incidental. I think our goal is to help people stay healthy and fit in this pandemic times. And we think we can help by keeping people healthy, by working out, less cases, less infections of COVID, and people able to get out again so that our economy can open up. So that's how we're trying to approach our sports business in terms of addressing the consumer needs at this point in this pandemic.
Great idea, great perspective, Sir Bob. We are going beyond the ideals of sports. We are taking health as an essential need. We should be healthy, we should be fit, especially in the time of pandemic. But I would like to go back to your question to you, Sec Rose, a while ago, because you have a great point there. And I think you, Sec Rose, already prepared an answer for you. If we may share your question again or your reaction again on her discussion earlier, sir.
Yes, Yusek, I was asking about the financial aspect of government interference and how how businesses can be helped, especially when dealing with the banks right now.
Yusek Rose?
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, there's a related question in the Q&A, and the question has to do with can governments intervene in the commercial banks so that they can, they can be more willing to lend. Actually, that's really an observation of even our Banco Central, that that banks are actually unwilling to take on the credit risk. And so while we cannot really impose on the commercial banks, what we are doing is really intervening through the government financial institutions. Of course, our banks, the Land Bank of the Philippines and the DBP. And through the Bayanihan too, there's actually a massive equity infusion into these two banks so that they can on lend to to the MSMEs. There's also financial assistance to the SB Corp, Small Business Corporation. So this is also for yeah, the small businesses. Now there are actually three other bills that we have suggested to the Congress, and this is actually the FIST, the Guide, and then the CREATE. So FIST and Guide are really more towards the geared towards financial assistance, more geared towards addressing the financial problems, especially I think the best one there is really coming up with what we call the Arise Inc. And this is more like a special purpose vehicle so that the banks can actually unload their non-performing loans to this vehicle for you know for a time bound demand, so let's say for 5 years, but that will actually in a sense ease off their burden, and hopefully they could take on this credit risk. Of course, also alongside the also included in the Bayanihan too is an equity infusion to Philippine Guarantee Corporation, and this is really to provide a guarantee, a credit guarantee, and this can be availed of even of the bank. So, like I said, government cannot really impose on the banks, no, but actually we are doing many other things so that hopefully the banks could actually could be more willing to take on the risk. So, like you have Phil Guarantee that will take on that will guarantee some of this credit risk, and then we are providing that special purpose vehicle hopefully when the bill gets enacted into law, so that they can unload some of this non-performing loans and take that off their balance sheets. Now there's also a question with respect to corporate income tax, and that's actually the third bill that we have recommended to Congress, and that's the CREATE. And this one is a restated, reconfigured SITIRA law, where right away upon enactment, then the corporate income tax rate will be reduced from the current 30% to 25%. And then 2 percentage points thereafter until it reaches 20. So we have all these other things, but really, but for us, what really should take priority is to be able to get this COVID-19 under control, and that's why for now the focus really is with respect to our health systems improvement and to get everybody to cooperate in complying with the minimum health standards. So that's it for me now. For now, Tina.
Thank you, Yusek. Rose, I think we also heard a great discussion on hope. Sir Bob,
Well,
from
yes,
our side. Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah, especially for Eric, that was a good presentation about hope. I was just wondering on his last two slides, he was talking about optimism. Why optimism and courage are needed. Instead of being cautious and conservative, which many businessmen may want to take at this point in time because of the uncertainty, you are saying that, on the contrary, we should be more optimistic and we should have more courage moving forward. What happens if we become conservative or just simply cautious, Eric?
Thanks, Bobby. Well, as I mentioned, a couple of the founders of family-owned businesses that I've been helping passed away out of depression, not because of COVID. And if you continue to always hang on to a thread that highlights the uncertainty, I think it's not going to make you act. It's not going to provoke you. You're just simply going to be confined to your room and do nothing. So at this point in time, the do nothing option is not an option. It is very clear that the only certainty now is extreme uncertainty. So you better get out of that particular hole where you are in, because your responsibilities are out there. You have to first manage and preserve your cash. Therefore, you need a lot of brain stimulation. Second, you need to maintain a quality workforce. I have a client overseas. He has around 40,000 employees. He was depressed until the children came to me and asked me, can you do something about our father? It took me almost a month to get back and forth over Zoom just to get him to say, you have a responsibility to 40,000 families here. And you've been through many wars from the 80s, 90s. This is in Jakarta. You've been to many wars, from political to economic to change of government to rebellions. This is one of those, even if it's unprecedented, that you will have to face. And because we know for a fact that at some point this will eventually recover. So one day he called me up. He said, I'm ready to fight this war, except that I am 20 years older. He's in his mid-70s. So yes, you can provide hope, but we need to act. And that's why I say there have been many great stories that are provided, articulated many times over to tell everyone that for as long as you continue to be optimistic, that at some point, at the end of the road, there's a lot of things that you can work on. I think you can push this. So wealth, so cash preservation is key. Maintaining a quality workforce, because the moment you start seeing some signs of recovery, you better make sure that you have a great workforce to push your business. Third, make sure you manage and continue to seek out your customers. And finally, make sure that you maintain your health. Those are, I think, the key operative word that any business owner must embrace. And therefore, that has a lot of optimism in it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. I think the other one that you need to do is to tell us, leave your calling card so we can come back to you for other questions.
Thank you.
I agree. Prof. Eric, everyone has the tendency to be pessimistic and optimistic. But, sometimes we just really need a little push from the experts to lean towards the tendency of being optimistic, especially in the middle of this pandemic. So great work there. But for now, I would like to ask Sir Gary.
Yes,
Sir
Tina.
Gary. Yes.
Hi.
So right now we are currently seeing trends because we see shifts from the purchasing behavior in the market. But what are the trends are we expecting to settle even beyond the pandemic?
Yeah. Thank you, Tina. There is no doubt that changes have already happened, and there may be more coming. But surely not everything is going to change, even things that have changed a lot for the moment. And I am saying this because based on our conversations with consumers, they want to get back to normal. They are not aspiring for a new normal. They want to return to what they know. And that's a real takeaway from the spike in comfort foods, from the observation that people are responding to TV commercials in much the same way as before the crisis. It points to consumers wanting less change, not more change. So therefore, routines will be affected, yes, but may not necessarily be in the ways being popularized right now as the new normal. And these changes will definitely also vary across industries. So therefore, depending on which industry you operate in, consider which of these behavioral changes will be temporary and which will really be assimilated into the new and lasting ways. Now, at least 3 themes from several that Kantar has identified may survive this crisis. One has already been mentioned a couple of times: hygiene. The definition of hygiene is exploding. It will impact any form of interaction and engagement. Everything people touch will have to offer assurance that it is sanitized well, because hygiene has become a life-saving tactic. How can things be done without physical proximity and not just contact? Of course, facial masks will be a mainstay. But on the part of brands, how will we innovate on this? How will we communicate and execute sanitation in a meaningful and increasingly less disruptive way? Think about banks, restaurants, gyms, dental clinics, spas, even home services and deliveries. What people really want is a hygiene perimeter within which they feel safe and can get back to normal. Each brand or retailer has to do this, but not in the same way. I'm sure we are all tired of hearing stay home, stay safe. And to most of us, it has already become white noise. So your brand has to find a hygiene message that is unique to your brand's purpose and personality, and deliver it in a meaningfully different way that your brand can own. And we think that's the first takeaway about the right signal to send to reactivate demand protection. The other change in behavior that we think will stick has to do with self-sufficiency. We think readiness will be the new sign of success, the new status symbol. People will not want to be caught by surprise again. They will want to stockpile, to know sources of essentials within their immediate environment. So if for everyone in the call, think about new pack sizes, different purchase cycles, longer expiration dates, do it yourself, investment and insurance. And the third one, and this is the last one for me, life from home. Again, this was mentioned earlier. With a number of people thinking that they are safe only when locked away, proving that working from home productively can work, and realizing that it is okay to live from home after developing habits over half a year in lockdown. This could really be something that will carry on. Imagine the new needs by your consumers, by your customers, yet to be learned about the life lived inside, and the new possibilities in terms of entertainment, commerce, learning, etc. So, bottom line of all these, more than ever, you have to know your consumers and customers most intimately now. Their needs, the frictions they encounter, their aspirations, their trade-offs, their buying journeys. The brands that understand the consumers the most and act effectively based on such intimate understanding will win during and after this crisis.
Sir Gary, being able to express my thoughts as a consumer, I am not even aware of my own purchasing behavior, but you're able to discuss it in layman's term for everyone to understand is a great point. Thank you so much for that. And now we have collated a number of questions from our participants. So we have first from Mr. Michael Andrew Aleta for USECRO's education is not part of the change in demand of consumers, and is it a part of the non-essentials? USECRO's, your thoughts?
Yes, hi. Thank you for the question. Actually, if you remember the framework I showed about the task group on recovery, and where we said that we will focus on 5 priority areas. One is health system improvement. Second is food security. Third is actually learning continuity. So it's really part of the focus areas. Although at the time that we did the survey before, about the changes in demand, that was back in April. So I think that's the reason why it did not come out, because children were still on vacation, and we all thought that that ECQ will only be for 1 month. Yeah, and so now we are in different times. But rest assured that with respect to government strategies, education is still a priority up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek. Now we have one question for Kantar, going back to the three uncertainties: disease, institution, and consumer. How should franchising pivot to move forward? Any industry that looks most promising based on trends and forecasts, Sir Gary?
All right. Yeah. It's definitely extremely difficult to predict which industries will succeed after the crisis. How we wish we all had the crystal ball, right? and use it. But what we are seeing is that industries, companies, businesses that are able to make effective use of platforms and technologies that enable consumers to reach the products and services that they need while living their lives inside. They are succeeding, relatively speaking, during the crisis. And we believe that after the crisis, they will be the businesses that will recover fastest. So if you are franchising in such an industry that is responding very well to the current crisis, then the chances are higher that after the crisis, you will be among the first industries to recover.
Thank you, Sir Gary. Now, another for Yusek Rose from Miss Vida Jean Akabanlit. Will the spa industry has a positive outlook by next year?
I think I will have to defer to Gary on this one. How I wish, because I'm also a very an avid customer of the spa industry.
Me too. I feel you.
Yes. I think what needs to happen is that the industry will really need to be more creative. They will need to assure their customers about hygiene, about health and safety. I think if they're able to do that, then I don't see why not. Thank you.
That's optimism right over there. So I'm also excited about that, Yusek Rose. Talking about optimism. This next question is for Professor Eric. Are there changes on how succession should operate in the new normal? Prof. Eric.
It has to be relentless because of what happened during the COVID and the unfolding events now. There seemed to be a surge from a governance perspective, a surge on crystallizing ownership issues among family members, among partners, among 1, 2, 3 generations. So as a matter of fact, we've put in a battery of lawyers now helping us out on creating a lot of modified ownership structures, from wills to trust to what have you. We're doing a lot of things, and this is mostly in Singapore. So because of the spate of deaths and incapacitated business owners, we have crystallized it. Second, succession is not a one-time thing. Succession is a process. It's a journey. It's not something that in your deathbed, you tell your son, your child, your offspring, bahala ka na. That is the biggest mistake of a business owner. And when that happens, that bahala ka na divided by 4 children will create a circus and chaos, right? You don't have to go far. There are too many of them here in the Philippines. So therefore, the process that we're pushing, really, it's a journey. It's a 5-year, it's a 10-year journey. And I will always look at the Chinese proverb, when is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When is the next best time? Immediately. Do not waste, because procrastination is a thief of time. We have been so obsessed with making money on the wealth transfer, but we have totally neglected the importance of going through the journey with the next in line. And hey, what if the next in line dies on the line of duty? You need to have a deeper bench, not just the children, but the professionals. So all of these things, they're all part and parcel of what this pandemic has provoked and has made business owners to think about their mortality now, right? So these are the key ingredients. And if we don't do it, what if it happens to us? And I guess to dovetail on the question of optimism, I have several clients in Vietnam and Cambodia. We're not even talking about COVID. I have a client in China. We're not talking about COVID anymore. They've overcame that. Vietnam has less than 1,000 infected for a 97 million population, and less than 100? No, less than 30, less than 40 people died. So we're now talking about rebuilding. So it's only in the Philippines that we appear to be so obsessed with this COVID, pervasiveness. But in other countries, we talk about business. I have meetings every so often, and there's no COVID in our agenda. It's all about making sure that, like what I questioned in the first slide, what did you do in this pandemic? Did you do many things? And that's a call to action for business owners. And therefore, we should be Asianized, not localized in mindset.
Sir, the topic about succession might be sensitive for some, but it is indeed an essential topic to talk about if you are running a family business. So I agree with your points. Sir Bob, I think you have a few more questions for our experts.
Well, basically, that's what we have prepared for. And everybody made a beautiful presentation, very thorough, and a lot of pick-up points for our participants this afternoon.
So now to move forward, I think we can hear from our delegates again. So after you have heard the valuable information shared by our panel of experts, what do you think is the most challenging aspect of the new normal? So for our attendees, for our participants, you can pick 3 choices that we will be flashing on the screen. First, change in consumer behavior. Second, health consciousness of consumer. Third, quarantine of under 18 and senior citizen, or economic capability of consumer as your 4th option, or social distancing protocols. It can be a lack of transportation or internet connectivity. It can also be access to the right information or economic condition of consumers or the access to financing. Again, we will give you a minute to answer our poll survey. So we would like to see the effect of the insights given by our speakers today with your reactions, with your responses to this poll. I think we have an interesting result early on from our pre-poll. And right now, for this poll, we have, let me check that. I'm scrolling my screen. There you go. So change in consumer behavior got the most number of responses with 56% or 96 votes. So this is the most challenging aspect of the new normal. And next is economic capability of consumer. Yes, indeed. And the third is economic condition of consumers. Your thoughts on this, Sir Bobby?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on one of the issues there. Quarantine of under 18 and senior citizens. Sabi nila, if this will have to continue, let's create na lang a grandparents day once a month so the lolos and the lolas can bring the 18 and below apos to the malls and eat and do things. I'm glad that they're being liberalized. I mean, it's unfair to the seniors, and we're also depriving our kids of the ability to be able to interact. So just a comment to that. But basically, all those first three that you mentioned are basically the concerns of our members.
Indeed. Nako, kung magkaroon tayo ng once a month na Lolo and Lola's Day, that can also be something to look forward to be optimistic, if I may say, as a customer or as a consumer and also as a business person. But guys, we certainly learned a lot from our panel of experts who took part in our afternoon session.